Yes, everybody, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur. Jack and Dave here to react to Stephen Warnock's maybe opinions on our injury crisis. And he's saying, in fact, it's self-inflicted by perhaps Ange's tactics. So we're going to pull up some quotes from his and then dissect maybe where he might be right and where he might be wrong. Here's what Stephen Warnock had to say on Sky Sports very recently. Speaking on Sky Sports, he did say this: there has to be a bit of an understanding of Spurs' injury situation. With a fully fit squad, they are a very good team. However, if you're going to continue playing this way, you're going to get injuries, and that's the problem. He was then asked, if the injuries are self-inflicted, and he said 100% they are. They've got to be due to the style of play. If you look at the runs that Romero, Van de Ven, Udogi make in recovery to get back into the position, that is a lot of work to do. It's very difficult to continue to do that. The hardest thing to do as a defender is to run back towards your own goal without the ball. Mentally, even, that is very tiring within itself. I just think from the way Spurs play, they either need four top quality center backs who they can rotate amongst to play that way. Then they need two quality fullbacks to again rotate with. If you're going to play with that system, then you need to rotate. I think there are a lot of good little gems here from this, from Stephen Warnock, from the tactics, Dave, to also maybe the need for the system to work, because he kind of does a bit of both. He sort of criticizes the system, kind of saying, you know what, it's a little bit too much to be asking of these guys, to rotate them or to roll them out week in, week out without any real rotation. But he's saying this system is good and can work if you do have that top quality rotation that you can do amongst the squad. So I actually really like Stephen Warnock's quote. I kind of disagree with little bits and pieces because I'm not too sure if he knows kind of Spurs' history, let's say, with injuries, because we've had injuries with Antonio Conte, who did a very different style. We've had injuries with Jose, who did a very different style. We've had injuries even straight away with Nuno, if I recall correctly. So it's always been the case that there have been injuries at Spurs. I'm convinced it's having to do with just some sort of medical team issue, kind of somebody within the department that's been doing things wrong, and also just feels like we're cursed. But what do you make of Stephen Warnock's maybe parts on the tactics, to also the fact that, Spurs don't help out the manager with the quality rotation? I think a really good quote.
Look, I think maybe 5-10% of the injury crisis. Everyone's at different fitness levels. Some will be able to handle the runabout that Postecoglou's asking them to do. Some can't. Fair enough. But I think what he's failed to factor in is when you go into a season with European football, double the workload, double the games, double the travelling, etc., it opens you up to a lot more injuries. So I think, but I'm not surprised. He is a guy that's not used to playing European football, so probably doesn't have that understanding there, to be quite frank with you. So, I think he's missed a major
Maybe a
factor
bit of
there.
bias. He really didn't like running against,
But you know
running
what,
towards
Jack?
his
You
own
don't
goal.
even have to play European football to understand that. All you got to do is watch the Newcastle documentary on Amazon Prime. They pump money into this. They highlighted it on the reason why they needed a good summer transfer window that season. And ironically, they ended up carrying a load of injuries when they went into Europe. And, they dipped off in the league and stuff like that. So Europe plays a massive factor. Then you factor in, this isn't just a Postecoglou problem. Where did it go wrong under Conte when we had him? When we suffered an injury crisis, he couldn't deal with it, and we never recovered from it. Injuries at Tottenham Hotspur has always been inherent in my lifetime. We've got the best facilities, but we're not bringing in the best people to work with it. And the problem is, if you've got the best facilities, you need the best people, because you're trying to implement science and all that sort of stuff into it. And I think that's where Tottenham's at fault, and I think there's been a recognition of that. The fact that they're out there now looking for a new medical department, to a certain
Yeah.
degree, that they're out there looking for new people to come in. So I think there's an admission that maybe Tottenham have been getting it wrong, because it predates Ange Postecoglou. And then lastly, look, what I don't like is, I think we're getting into an era where we're making excuses for players at Tottenham Hotspur not to work hard. At the end of the day, I hear the training methods, what he's asking them to do in games. I'm sorry, Man United's class of 91, they always say training was more intense than games on the weekend and stuff. So I think we are getting into an area where we're trying to give players an excuse. Where I do agree with Stephen Warnock, and it's something I've always said: whatever manager you bring into Tottenham, we don't hire bad managers. We hire good managers, but we hamper them by not giving them a full squad to work with.
Yeah, they've
We say to
every
them,
manager's had that problem with quality rotation. Yeah.
Exactly. Like we say to them, Jack, we want you to handle 4 competitions, but we're not going to give you the squad. And then all of a sudden they're in a position where they have to pick and choose. And if they pick wrong, Daniel Levy fires them. It's not fair for managers at Tottenham Hotspur. The thing is, right, when they're in the interview process, they're interviewing the manager. He's coming with a whole, what's the right word? I'm not in the business, so I don't know. But like presentation and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
They come with how they want to play, what their intensity is like, what their training is like, etc., etc. So the club know that when they hire them. So it's up to the club then to realise, okay, this guy needs a squad. But we don't do that. We leave them short. We go, you've got one left back, run the bollocks off him. As soon as he becomes injured, find a solution. And all we're doing is asking them to cover up Daniel Levy's and Johan Lang's mistake when they had the opportunity in the summer to build it. I said in the summer, we need to bring in more experienced players. We need to fill out this squad because we've got 4 competitions next season. If you don't give Postecoglou the players to rotate, how do you expect them to rotate? You know,
Mm.
people could sit here and say in hindsight, he's got Regulon. The reality is he was deemed not good enough for this club 4 years ago. Why is he still here even as an option? You know
Yeah.
what, Dougie got injured last season. We know we needed left back in the summer transfer window. We didn't do it. And the reality is, if a manager doesn't trust a player, he's not playing him. It's the same as an employee. If you're going to hire someone, you're not going to hire him if you don't trust them. It's that simple. So for me, that's where the problem is, Jack. That's where the problem was in the summer. We simply didn't do our homework. Newcastle, in fairness to them on the documentary, they done their homework, but with financial fair play and stuff, it was a lot more difficult for them to actually navigate the problem. But the thing is, in the documentary, they pinpointed it. Even though it happened to them, they pinpointed it and they knew about it. We didn't. We've gone into it absolutely blind. We haven't gone about, navigating.
Yeah.
And the sickening thing is, we don't have the restraints on us on what we can spend like Newcastle do. We don't have them restraints. So that's where the problem lies for me, Jack.
I really agree with his point about the rotation. I do think Ange Postecoglou's system or his tactics would in fact work if he did have better players in a variety of positions. Like I don't think he has the forward line that can get the best out of his system. I think his system puts our forwards and our wingers in really good areas to make things happen. They're just not able to do it down to their quality. And then also the players they have to compete with aren't really of a high quality either. So we're just going to be kind of null and void there. And then also in other areas of the pitch, it doesn't feel like he really has the rotation that he can pull off, to be able to get, really good performances week in, week out, despite also asking a lot of them physically. I do think he asks a lot of them physically more than probably other managers do with their tactics, but it's not necessarily that unique to Postecoglou. I think you see that with plenty of managers with sort of their very in demand, physical pressing and various high lines and whatnot. You saw Bielsa's teams, right? They were just relentless, sort of up and down the pitch in the way that they played. But you saw that it could work, and you saw that it did in fact work for like a good period at various clubs that he's been at. It worked with Bielsa for a little period there. It definitely
Jurgen
was
Klopp's
working.
Full Metal Football.
Klopp's Full Metal Football is probably better example even than like a Bielsa, but Bielsa, almost more, hectic than even Postecoglou, you could argue. De Zerbi, right, when he first came to the Premier League, I could say also had a very hectic sort of style, very high line, very up and down, very high press. And I remember there was a period where right before he basically got himself sacked, with all the complaining and everything that he was doing, he also ran into a huge injury issue, right? When they had the European football, they were losing a lot of games. They were finding it difficult to balance the two competitions. And De Zerbi eventually sort of, found it difficult to balance the two given his play style. And then I remember too with Hansi Flick at currently with Barcelona, but just in general, I remember with his Bayern team that despite being very successful, he also kind of asked a lot of his players physically to get up and down, high line, that sort of thing. And you would see guys kind of pull up sort of halfway through the game with a hamstring injury or with some sort of thing, and have to be wheeled off. But didn't stop him from being very, very successful as a manager, right? Despite those injuries. So I think he's really spot on, Stephen Warnock, about the rotation, where even if the system technically forces you to run back towards your own goal, maybe it technically forces you to really, have to be physically in top shape and, have to also not be making mistakes that could lead to you having to run back towards your own goal. There's a lot of risk that comes with Postecoglou's style. It's just that I don't think it's that unique to him. I think you see that with a lot of other managers' style. It's just with them, most of the time they've been able to rotate with good quality players, and then that's been allowing them to succeed, to be able to get, really good performances from various rotation of players, and so that there isn't a huge drop in quality or huge drop in sort of performances. But then also a good example would be with some of these guys too, like when they maybe didn't have the rotation necessary, or when maybe they did reach a really bad injury situation, you did see that they also suffered, but maybe they weren't given the same criticism that Ange has been given, right? Deserby, we saw things really car crash with him, but I don't know if he was given the same sort of criticism. And then same thing with Bielsa, really car crashed with him. Not sure if it really was given the same criticism. And then even with Klopp, he had some really bad injury situations at other points, during his project. And I'm not too sure if I remember that being given a whole lot of criticism. So it feels sometimes a
Anyhow,
bit unfair on Ange. Yeah.
anyhow, last season, everyone said, "Oh, injuries, financial fair play, etc." It is what it is. But when it comes to Postecoglou, it's madness. It's suicidal. The reality is, you brought up Bielsa, we brought up, Klopp's full metal football, etc., etc. All high pressing systems asking you to do a lot. But and the thing is, it's proven you can win like this. You actually go back and look at the last defensive manager to win a trophy in England. And Antonio Conte at Chelsea, ever since then, it's all been managers that, play on the front foot football, trying to play this possession-based football, etc. This is the way football is going. In theory, we're doing the right thing. But the problem is with these systems, you need continued investment because some players can only hack it for 2 years. Some players might only, you know what I mean? So you need continued investment. But that's where we went wrong. We invested, but we invested in the wrong age group,
Hmm.
quite frank. We try to walk before we can run. We try to look at the longer term before the immediate. And
Hmm.
that's the problem. We know where Postecoglou wants to play. They know that. And that's why it's even more of a big mismanagement in the summer completely because you're not bringing in players for the here and now. You're not continually refreshing. You need that when you're going to play like this. And that's where it's all gone wrong. But, you know, this is what annoys me. You've got all these so-called experts out there, but they're only talking off what they're thinking right now. They're not looking at the history of the football club. None of them really care about Tottenham. They all look to have a jibe at Tottenham, and I don't think we get a lot of fair analysis around
Yeah.
Tottenham from a lot of these guys. Like you spoke about it there. When it was Jurgen Klopp and he was going through his problems, it was all about backing him. With Arteta, it was all about backing him. With Eddie Howe, it was all about keeping him in the job, backing him. As soon as it comes to a Tottenham manager, sack him. You hear Jamie Carragher make excuses and reasons, to keep Liverpool managers in the job. But when it came to Antonio Conte, get rid of him. When it comes to Postecoglou, get rid of him. I don't
Yeah.
think we get a fair shake off some of these guys sometimes. I think their punditry sometimes can be a bit biased because at the end of the day, none of them respect Tottenham. They all come from an era where lads, it's Tottenham, just
Yeah. Yeah.
make things a little bit hard. Everyone loves to laugh at us and stuff like that. But, I think what you'll find is when they're talking about their own clubs or clubs they have an affinity to, you get a lot more fair analysis around the situation. When it comes to Tottenham, they all want to destabilise. That's why none of them are out there going, let's look at this differently. That's why they're all sitting there saying, sack them, because they just want Tottenham to be in trouble all the time.
Well, let us know what you think of Dave's final comments there. Do they not give us fair enough analysis? Do they not really kind of get the whole picture as much as they do other clubs where you might get a bit better, more wholesome analysis from them? And yeah, do we not really have the right sort of people representing us in that department? Let me know in the comments. Please, everybody, smash the like button as well. And we'll see you next time. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.